Within You is the Power by Henry Thomas Hamblin. Read to you by Blue Friend. Chapter 4. Cause and Effect. Man is the cause of the disasters in his life. He reaps through the ages exactly as he sows. Life is perfectly just and rewards every man according to his works. The fate of the present is the reaping of his sowing in, it may be, a distant past. Therefore, the disasters and sufferings of this life must not be attributed to the interference of a capricious and unreasonable God, for the truth is, they are due to the exact working of a perfectly just law. Fate, once created, is irrevocable. It can neither be fought nor evaded. By fighting against fate, man merely smashes himself to pieces. To do so is equivalent to running his head against a stone cliff. The harder he charges, the greater the damage to his head, but the cliff is unaffected. Fate, although largely self-created, is really the divine purpose of life. Therefore, to resist it is to fight against God. Fate, again, is not punishment in any vindictive sense. It is the drawing together of certain remedial experiences through which the soul can learn the lessons it has failed to learn in past ages and thus attain wisdom. The object is the highest good of the individual, although it may entail suffering and painful experiences. Because the disasters in man's life are due to past wrongdoing, it naturally follows that his future depends upon the kind of life that he lives today. If, in the past, he has created for himself a sequence of events and experiences from which it is impossible for him to escape, it is obvious that his future lives depend entirely upon how he lives the present one. It will be seen that if man can learn the lessons of the present life and live in such a way as to cease creating trouble for the future, he is beginning to climb the path of liberation, which is the road all advanced souls have to follow, or rather have the privilege of following. By following this path, man ceases to be bound to the wheel of fate. This little work does not teach reincarnation, but its teaching is based on a belief that man, in reality, is a spiritual being, a divine spark from the sacred fire. Spirit, being immortal, has no beginning or end, therefore always lives. This present life is one of countless experiences, each one of which helps to build up character. There is no death, but only changes from one vehicle to another. There is no beginning or end or time in reality. These are mere limitations of the human mind. It is impossible for man to die. He can only leave his body. He cannot kill himself, try how he will. He can only force himself out of his body. Man must always go on, whether he likes it or not. He proceeds through the ages, reaping exactly as he sows. We have already seen that man cannot avoid or fight successfully against fate, but that he can become free from the wheel of fate by living a life of harmony with divine law. At this point, it is necessary to point out that most of man's troubles are not caused by fate at all, but are due to his fighting against, or trying to resist, the great plan. If the experiences of life are resisted, or an attempt is made to evade its discipline, troubles and difficulties will repeat, becoming more painful and insistent until their lesson is learned and the life changed accordingly. Therefore, man has in his power greatly to improve his present life, as well as to create a far better future, simply by living his life today in harmony with divine law. This is the inner secret of all esoteric teaching. The new birth, or regeneration, means the awakening of the soul to conscious immortality. The old self, that was bound to the wheel of fate and the plane of cause and effect, from which it could never free itself, owing to the fact that it was continually binding itself to the wheel afresh, through following selfish desires, dies, and a new self is born. In other words, the consciousness is raised from the plane of sin and death, of sensuality and desire, of restriction and captivity, to the higher plane of spirit, where man realizes that he is a son of God. He discovers that the divine spark within is his true self. He realizes also that he has always lived in his real spiritual self. Beginning and end, like change and decay, belong purely to the material plane and have no place in reality. They form part of this present three-dimensional existence, but have no reality. Endless being is the reality. Anything short of this is mere illusion. It is not necessary, therefore, to believe in the theory of reincarnation, or that all our experiences must, of necessity, take place on this plane. Sufficient to know that we can never die, that we cannot escape from ourselves, and that to neglect seeking with all our heart for union once again with our divine source is merely to prolong our sufferings. Further, it is necessary to point out that all thought and action have an immediate as well as far-reaching effect. It is true that the full effect of life here is not reaped until after our little course on this plane has been run, but great differences are effected in the present life nevertheless. The way a youth makes use of or discards his opportunities either makes or mars to a very large extent his adult career. Opportunities, once allowed to pass, can never be recalled. Sins committed and wrongs done to our fellow men have an unpleasant habit of repeating themselves in a reversed way later in life. For instance, a man may get on in life, and in his selfish climb may trample on one weaker than himself, ruining him and driving him to despair. Years afterwards, he will probably be treated in exactly the same way by someone stronger and more favorably situated than himself. Therefore, there is an immediate sowing and reaping that finds fruition in this life. By immediate is meant within the compass of this life. The reaping may be delayed 10 or 20 years, but in the writer's experience, it not infrequently comes. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Those, therefore, who think that life is not just, and who whine and complain about the way they are treated, are simply increasing their own troubles. Until man realizes that the cause of all his troubles is within himself, he can never do anything to remedy matters because, obviously, the only thing that is required is for him to change within. Man has to become changed within before his life can be altered. His thoughts, his ideals, his attitudes toward life must all become transformed. When this change has been effected, he not only begins to repair his present life, but he creates a fairer and nobler life for the future. Man, then, has to change. His desires and aspirations, instead of being directed towards hate and evil, must be transformed to love and good. Instead of wallowing in lust and selfishness, he must lift himself to higher and better things. How can this be done? It cannot be accomplished by the finite man at all, but it can be achieved by the infinite power within. It is only when man realizes his oneness with the infinite and believes the omnipotent power is at his disposal that the spiritual power within becomes available. So long as man has doubts and fears or disbeliefs, this special power is not available. It is his, but his state of heart and mind prevents him from either realizing the presence of the power or making use of it. Before the machinery of a workshop can run, it must be connected up with the engine room. In the same way, man, before he can live the new life, must become one with the infinite life and power. Entering this new life of power does not take away life's experiences, its trials, troubles, or adversities, but the change within does prevent the creation of unnecessary troubles and suffering. Also, even a so-called unkind fate loses much of its power to wound, for the higher man rises into union with God and infinite love, and the less power, it still operates, but it fails to wound so deeply. For man, seeing with illumined eyes, knows that it is good that has come to bless, and not evil that has come to slay. Painful fate loses its power to hurt when man ceases to resist it and meets it with open arms, seeking to learn the lessons that it has to teach. Chapter 5. Success. What is meant here by success is the achievement of something worthwhile that shall make the world better and richer, and add something to the common good. Our sphere of life may be very humble, but if we overcome our own weaknesses, help others along life's pathway, and do our daily work better than we need, our life cannot be other than successful. If at the end of our life we can be thankful for it, realizing that we have made the best possible use of it, we have achieved real success. Success to the unillumined may mean the accumulation of wealth and the winning of fame. Yet those who give up their lives to the acquirement of these things are the greatest failures in life. They gain wealth, it's true, but they find that their money can only buy those things that bring no satisfaction, that it cannot purchase for them any of the things which are really worth having. Success of this hollow kind can be won, but at too great a price. The greatest teacher of all once said, "For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" What does it profit a man if he gets on at the cost of happiness, health, joy of living, domestic life, and the ability to appreciate nature's beauties and simple pleasures? Yet man must be a striver. He must be forever seeking better things and to express himself more perfectly. One who drifts through life making no effort to rise to better things is not worthy of the name of citizen. Man, if he is to be worthy of the name, must be forever striving, overcoming, rising. Failure in life is always due to weakness of character. It is only strong characters who can resist the buffeting of life and overcome its difficulties. The man who would make his life worthy of respect and who would rise to high achievement and service will be confronted by difficulty at every turn. This is as it should be, for it weeds out the weaklings and unworthy aspirants, and awards the spoils to those who exhibit faith, courage, steadfastness, patience, perseverance, cheerfulness, and strength of character generally. Success, especially material success, is not in itself of much benefit to the one who wins it. It does not satisfy for long, but it is valuable in other ways. For instance, success based on service is a benefit to the community. If it were not for successful people of this type, the ordinary man in a rut would have a bad time. Also, the winning of success builds up character. One who would be successful in the battle of life must be prepared to be tested and tried in every possible way. One who survives them all is built up in character in almost every direction. Even in his success, however, he will be tempted and tried. One who is engaged in the harsh struggle of business, or who takes part in the public life, may, if he does not watch himself very carefully, become hard and callous. Of all failures, this is probably the worst. One who succeeds in other directions and becomes a hard man is, after all, a sorry failure. Life is a continual battle. To the ordinary person, it is generally a fight with circumstances and the ordinary difficulties of life, which are very important in his eyes. The more advanced soul is not troubled much by these things. He rises above them, but he is tempted and tried to a much greater degree and in a far more subtle manner. He who thinks that by following a certain cult or ism he will be able to have an uneventful walk through life is merely deluding himself. As he learns to overcome the difficulties of life which baffle the ordinary individual, he will be tempted and tried in other and more subtle ways. This is because life is not for mere passing pleasure, but is for the building up of character through experience. Therefore, one who would succeed must be strong and wise and patient. Those who aspire to make their lives really worthwhile, who desire to serve their fellows more perfectly, who want to build up character through experience and overcome all their weaknesses, inherited or otherwise, must look within for power and wisdom. It must be pointed out, however, that man must not use his spiritual powers for selfish purposes. There is an immutable law which has been known to the inner teachings all through the ages that forbids the use of spiritual powers for the creation of wealth or even of daily bread. Jesus was subject to the same spiritual law and was tempted exactly in the same way as we. The tempter said, "Command this stone that it be made bread." If Christ had turned the stone into bread, he would have failed in his great mission. But he knew the law. There are thousands of people today who are trying not only to turn, by the misuse of their spiritual powers, stones into bread, but also into motor cars, fat bank balances, lands, and houses. Such are heading to disaster, for they are working against the combined spiritual powers of the universe. The enemy of souls offers those who have learned to tap the inexhaustible power of the universe, and who have discovered that they are sons of God, wealth, power, pomp, the applause of men, the glittering of things that perish, if only they will misuse their God-given power. Like Jesus, they must refuse. They must put service before self and give instead of grasping. Thousands are being taught today to force their human will upon life and to use occult powers for the acquisition of wealth and power. They are taught to enter the silence and demand what they want. How to get what you want is the slogan of these modern teachers. Not merit, not service, not giving, but demanding, compelling by human willpower and by the use of these occult forces. This is another device of the enemy of souls, and it is taking tens of thousands of seekers for truth out of the path. This subject is dealt with more fully in a separate chapter. If, however, man's ambition is to serve and to give instead of to grasp and grab, if also he seeks success through the misuse of his spiritual powers, he can go forward, and the power will go with him and will help him. When once the power has been aroused, man must cease all purely selfish striving, although, of course, there will still be much selfishness in his motives. He must seek his success through service and through following noble aims, through merit and a fair exchange, instead of trying to wring success from life, no matter who may suffer thereby. Further, when this power has been brought into expression, it must be used only in love, for if it is used otherwise, it will destroy the user. Again, the power must not be used by the finite human will, but an endeavor must be made to find what the will of the whole is, and then to work in harmony with it. Behind each life is the divine will and purpose. Each life is perfect as it is imaged in the universal mind. The highest success, indeed, the only true success, is to live the life according to the great cosmic purpose, or in other words, as it is imaged in the one mind. Do not imagine, however, that it is the will of the universal mind that man should be a failure or lacking in achievement. Far from it, for we have only to contemplate the universe to see that the infinite mind is forever achieving, and that it never fails. Man, too, must succeed, but let him mix wisdom with his ambition, and work for the benefit of the whole, rather than for any purely selfish purpose. It is natural for man to get on in life to a moderate extent. In order to get on, he must become more efficient, and thus serve life and his fellows better. Therefore, there is no harm in success of this kind. It is natural and laudable also for one in poor and unlovely surroundings to have an ambition to raise himself to better circumstances. It is only right that he should desire to make life brighter and better for his wife and family. So long as he indulges in ambition wisely, and if he seeks success through better service to his fellows, he is a laudable purpose. If, however, he does not curb and control his ambition, but allows it to run away with him, he will lose all real joy in life, and at last, when it's too late, learn to his sorrow that his life, through too much success, has been a failure. It must not be deduced from this that the author deprecates large achievement. There must always be the few who have huge responsibilities to bear. The real success of the lives of the great ones depends entirely upon their motive. If they seek merely power, fame, and self-aggrandizement, then their life, no matter how it may appear otherwise, can only be a failure. If, however, their motive is service, then their life is truly successful, no matter how it may appear to be otherwise. The writer's experience has been that it is necessary that we should always be progressing, achieving, overcoming, and endeavoring to succeed. One of the greatest laws of the universe is progress. Therefore it's fatal to stand still. We must go forward. We must achieve. We must accomplish things. If we do so, we may find that many things which cost us much effort and hard work are not worth having. Yet all the time we are learning through experience and are being strengthened and prepared for greater things. Through repeated failure to find true satisfaction, we arrive finally at true knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. We are wise then, if, with the world at our feet, we can be satisfied with a very moderate material success, and turn our attention and aspirations to higher and better things. In concluding this chapter, let it be pointed out that the success and achievement will not drop ready-made from heaven into your lap. All who succeed are gluttons for work, toiling while others play and sleep. All teaching to the contrary is erroneous. To think that success is going to come to you when it is unmerited simply because you can make use of affirmations or employ mental treatments is a folly of the first water. On the other hand, to use the inner forces in an occult way so as to compel material things or success, so-called, in any shape or form to come to you is black magic. One who stoops to such practices becomes a black magician, earning for himself a terrible retribution. There is only one way to succeed in the affairs of life, and that is by raising oneself to greater usefulness and service, by doing things better than they have been done before, by bearing greater responsibility. You serve humanity better, and therefore merit success. It is more blessed to give than to receive, said the Master, and this is true even in the practical and material affairs of life. First, you must give better and more valuable service. In other words, deserve and merit before you expect to see it materialize. You must sow before you can reap. You must become too big for your present position before you are capable of occupying a larger one. You must grow and expand in every possible way, and as you grow, so will your success increase. Outward success is only a reflection, so to speak, of what you really are, and a result of greater and more valuable service to humanity. It requires great effort and determination to get out of the rut, but so long as your ambition is not ignoble or selfish, there will be found within you power sufficient for all your needs. To win success either in the hurly-burly of life or the more difficult path of spiritual progress demands imagination, vision, courage, faith, determination, persistence, perseverance, hope, cheerfulness, and other qualities. These are all to be found within. All these qualities lie more or less dormant within, and can be called into expression if we believe that infinite power is ours. Again, however, must be the warning, repeated, that this power must not be used for selfish self-aggrandizement. Still less may it be used, or rather misused, either to influence or dominate others. If this power is misused, their results are terrible and disastrous. Therefore, use the power only for the achievement of good and noble aims, and in service which shall enrich the life of your fellows, adding to the common good. Having arrived at this stage, you must go forward. There can be no holding back. Ever forward, the divine urge is sending you to greater achievement and accomplishment. Just as surely as the planets must revolve around the sun and fulfill their destiny, so also must you go forward. See to it, then, that your aims and ambitions are based upon eternal wisdom, for upon this does your whole future depend. Chapter 6. Health. It is impossible, in a little work of this description, to explain why it is that one person inherits a weak and ailing body, and another enjoys a strong and robust constitution. Sufficient for us here to notice that the days of rude, rugged health are passing, and that man is becoming more highly strung, nervous, and psychic in his make-up. The old type of rude and conscious health was due to the animal-like nature of man, which caused his body to be governed more completely by the instinctive mind. Less evolved humans are not affected, apparently, by the mental storms, psychic changes, and spiritual disharmonies that disturb the health of the more evolved types. We have an illustration of this in the case of some forms of insanity. The patient goes out of his mind, with the result that his bodily health becomes wonderfully good. The instinctive mind takes control of things, and rude, robust animal health is the result. When the patient was sane and his mind filled with worry, ambitions, plans, cares, lusts, hates, and griefs, he was probably very far from well. This would be due to the disturbing effects of his thoughts and uncontrolled emotions. When, therefore, his conscious mind gave way, he ceased to think of these disturbing things, with the result that the instinctive animal mind was able to work undisturbed. It is of no use sighing for the good old times, when people were rugged and strong in a way that savages are rugged and strong, for evolution has decreed that man shall change into a higher and more nervous and sensitive type. In this sensitive type, wrong thoughts and emotions quickly produce pain and suffering. The majority of people do not know what good health is. Not only do they suffer from minor ailments, such as headaches, indigestion, rheumatism, neuritis, but they also never feel hearty or completely well. They are strangers to the joy of living. Life does not thrill them. Nothing quickens their blood. They have no moments of vivid ecstasy. In other words, they do not live. They merely exist at a poor, dying rate. Again, The majority of people are susceptible to infectious diseases and epidemics, yet if they were really well, they would be immune. Instead, however, of seeking immunity through health, they are seeking it through the use of vaccines and serums, thus adding to the burdens which the body has to bear. All attempts in this direction are bound to end in failure, for as fast as one disease is suppressed, another one will appear. Many people look upon disease and sickness as inevitable, yet the truth is that health is the normal state, and ill health an abnormality. In tracing back ill health to its source, we find, first of all, that it is due to disobedience of natural law. Large numbers of people break nearly every known natural law of health and are surprised that they become ill. Yet the wonder is that they are as well as they are. Yet, while obedience to nature's laws and the use of nature cure methods will carry us a certain part of the way, we find that there must be causes even deeper than those which are physical. We are confronted by the fact that there are many people who obey every known physical law of health, who bathe, exercise, breathe, eat, and drink scientifically, who adopt nature cure methods instead of drugs and serums, who yet cannot find health. Therefore, we must search deeper and go to the mind in order to discover the cause of ill health. When we look to the mind, we find a prolific cause of sickness. Man thinks himself into ill health and disease. It is well known that thinking about disease and sickness produces them in the body. People who are forever thinking about disease, illness, operations, and other morbid subjects become a prey to these things. Those who believe that sickness is inevitable manifest it in their life. Morbid thinking produces a morbid state of body, causing it either to fall an easy prey to infection, or to break down into chronic ill health, or even disease. Allowing the thoughts to dwell upon morbid things is a sure way to sickness and invalidism. Man is not only made ill by his own negative thoughts and emotions, he is also under the hypnotic spell of the race mind. Quote, "The God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not." Unquote. We are all under the spell, more or less, of a huge illusion. The evil, disease, sickness, and other imperfections that we see and experience have no reality in reality, but have an existence in unreality. Although they are not real in a real sense, yet they are terribly real to this present limited consciousness. By realizing the truth, and by thinking and living in its light and power, the hypnotic spell becomes broken, not completely, else we should not grow old, but to such an extent that a state of greatly improved health can be enjoyed. We are also hypnotically affected by suggestion, which reaches us from 1,000 different sources. The conversations of friends and acquaintances affect us adversely. Their belief in disease and sickness as realities and in its inevitableness color all their conversation, and unless we guard against it, this unconsciously affects us. Newspapers, magazines, books, all steeped in the same error, also influence us unless we become too positive to be affected. From innumerable sources, it is subtly suggested to us that disease, sickness, infection are realities that cannot be evaded and to which we are prone. The effect of all this, putting it in simple and elementary language, is to divert the life power into wrong channels, thus producing disease and ill health in place of perfection. The normal state of health has to give place to a normal state of disease or sickness. The normal health state is, however, restored when truth is realized and the life lived in its light and power. Absolute truth and perfection stand behind all the illusion and imperfection of the sense life. It is by realizing the truth and the perfection of the reality, and by establishing the thought life in truth, so that our thoughts cease to be negative and based on error and illusion, that health is to be found. It is often said that ill health is the result of sin. It is, for thinking about disease, sickness, and health, believing them to be inevitable, is one of the greatest sins. The way of life is to walk, think, act after the Spirit, which is perfect, whole, immortal, and incorruptible, and not after the flesh, which is corruption, disease, sickness, and death. By thinking after the flesh, we dishonor God, who is absolute wholeness and perfection, and cut ourselves off from the divine life and power. But there are other ways by which wrong thinking destroys the health. Thinking thoughts of lust is a prolific cause of unhappiness, sickness, and nervous disease. The divine forces of life are directed into a wrong channel, resulting either in indulgence and inevitable weakening of body, brain, and will, or in repression and its consequent nervous diseases. If the thoughts are allowed to dwell upon impurity, evil results must follow in some form, either in action or ill health, or both. Thought must be controlled and reversed continually, not repressed, but reversed, for there is a tremendous difference between the two. Repression creates nervous trouble, but by reversing or transmuting the thoughts, the life becomes transformed, and the bodily health greatly improved. Further, indulging in thoughts of hate, resentment, ill will, fear, worry, care, grief, and anxiety produces ill health, and, by lowering the tone of the body, lays it open to infection and disease. We therefore see that the state of mind and the character of the thoughts are important factors which cannot be ignored. It is useless to treat ill health or disease if they are merely the external effects of hidden causes of the mind. In order to effect a cure, we have to get back to the cause of the trouble. Thought control is a great assistance. Substituting a right or positive thought for a wrong one will, in course of time, work wonders in the life. In the subconscious we have an illimitable power of extraordinary intelligence. According to our thoughts, this wonderful power either builds up health, harmony, and beauty in our life and body, or just the reverse. The power is good. The intelligence is apparently infinite, but it goes wherever our thoughts direct it. By our thinking, therefore, we either create or destroy, produce either good or evil. If therefore our thoughts are good, positive, and constructive, it follows that both our body and our life must become built up in harmony and perfection. The question is, can this be done? It can be done if we have the desire and persevere in the face often of seeming failure. Some readers may say at this point that they have no desire to be so frightfully good, that they're not prepared to give up lust, impurity, hate, anger, malice, and thoughts and emotions of this kind. Very well. If this is so, they must go on and learn, through suffering, the lessons which they refuse to learn willingly. Others may say, yes, I want to control my thoughts, but how can I cease to worry when I have so much to which to worry about? And how can I cease to hate when I have been so deeply wronged? This brings us to an even deeper cause of ill health than the mind. In other words, the attitude of the heart. Our scriptures tell us that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. By heart is meant the soul or feeling, desiring part of man. It is here where the conflict between the self-will and the divine will, between the desires of the flesh and the longings of the spirit, take place. The real root cause of all unhappiness, disharmony, and ill health is spiritual and not merely mental or physical. The latter are contributory causes, but the former is the fundamental cause. Spiritual disharmony is in reality the cause of all ill health and disease. Until spiritual harmony is restored, man is a kingdom divided against itself, which, as our Lord said, cannot stand. Healing, then, must be of a spiritual character. Until this harmony exists, there can be no overcoming of hate thoughts, fear thoughts, or worry thoughts, and until these are overcome, there can be no true healing. Our Lord's healing was a gracious healing of the spirit. It restored inward harmony by forgiving sin, by changing the heart's desires, by bringing the will of the subject into harmony with the divine will of the whole. Our Lord's healing was not accomplished by means of suggestion, neither was it achieved by human willpower. It was done by bringing into harmony of the heart and desires and will with the divine will. At the same time, there must have been a revelation of the truth that the will of God is love, wholeness, joy, and perfection, and not disease, sickness, and misery. Mental health does not become possible until we have made our peace with God, until we have surrendered entirely to the love principle. We cannot overcome our hate thoughts and malice thoughts or resentment thoughts by transmuting them into thoughts of love. Until we surrender to the divine will and leave all our problems to the infinite mind, we cannot cease to worry and fear. Mental discipline and thought control are necessary after this inward change has taken place, for we all have to work out our own salvation, but the essential thing is the inward heart surrender in love and trust. So long as we hate our brother, or fear what the morrow may bring, or worry about the things of this life, we can never be well. When, however, we have become attuned to the divine harmony and have learned to control our thoughts and emotions and to transmute fleshly and material desires into loving service, a state of wholeness is the inevitable result. Old, deep-seated disorders die away, and a steady improvement in the state of health takes place. In order to regain health, it is necessary to raise oneself up continually to the divine ideal of health, harmony, and perfection. But this is useless if there still remains a clashing of the personal will with the divine will, or if there is any hate, malice, envy, or fear in the heart. The will must be surrendered to the greater will. This in reality is our highest good, for the fulfillment of the divine will is the happy destiny of man. The heart must forgive and be filled with love. Fear must be cast out and replaced by confidence and complete trust before we can enter into that happy, carefree, restful state which is necessary for healing. Health is harmony, a delicate balance and adjustment between spirit, soul, mind, and body. This harmony is dependent entirely upon the greater harmony between ourselves and God. So long as there is a conflict of will, so long as there is hate or resentment, so long as there is selfishness or while there is fear, this harmony cannot exist. Therefore, the bedrock cause of health is spiritual harmony, all healing being a restoration of harmony between man and his divine source. When this harmony is restored, man is no longer a kingdom divided against itself, for he becomes established in unity. He works with the universe and the divine laws of his being, instead of against them. The divine life and power flow through him unimpeded, promoting perfect subconscious functioning. His thoughts become cleansed at their source. He becomes free from the hypnotic spell of the race mind. His eyes, through the influence of the divine spirit, become opened to the truth. Therefore, he is no longer blinded by the prince of this world. In the divine union, he becomes free. The subject of grief and its effect upon health has purposely been left to the last. No amount of right thinking will prevent bereavements in this life. These form part of the necessary disciplines of life, and it depends entirely upon how we meet our trials, whether they shall be hurtful or the greatest possible blessing. By rebelling against life's disciplines, griefs become hurtful, but the hurt is not in the bereavement itself, but in the attitude of the mind and heart. Until the soul is able to drink the cup of sorrow willingly and say, "Thy will be done," bereavement is hurtful, destroying both health and happiness. The cause of the hurt, however, is in the hardness of the heart, and not in the bereavement itself. There must, therefore, be submission and acknowledgment that the discipline is necessary. This does not imply, however, a weak giving in to grief and mourning. One who has been bereaved can never, it is true, be the same again, for he or she becomes more chastened, more loving, more sympathetic, richer, and more mellow in character. The loved one can never be forgotten, and that is no reason why the heart should be bowed down by grief, and the life made desolate by sorrow. In such cases, true religion, not religiousness, is the only thing that can satisfy the soul, harmonize the mind, and heal the body. To be established in truth, knowing that all is well, that God makes no mistakes, and that there is, in reality, no death, but only change, is the only way by which bereavement can be made to be a blessing in disguise. When this stage is reached, grief is overcome, death being swallowed up in victory. The only panacea for all life's troubles is conscious harmony with our divine source and the divine will and purpose which desire only our highest good.